Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back, and if you are new, thanks for checking out my channel. I hope that you are all well and that the month of December has started out well for you. I know that many of you participated in Nonfiction November, which was originally started by abookolive, and I will leave a link to her channel below. And either you intentionally read nonfiction books this month, or you checked out some booktubers channels that have been talking about nonfiction. I participated in Nonfiction November. I made sure that I read several nonfiction books, but I didn't read according to the prompts. So Olive puts out 4 words to be used as prompts, and I didn't use those. Although maybe these books would fall into those categories in some way, I didn't try to fit them into any category. And I had 9 nonfiction possibilities that I was considering, and I managed to read 6.5 of them. 2 of them were from Margaret Atwood, and I read Payback Debt and the Shadow Side of Wealth. And this was a book about debt in a very broad term, debt when it comes to finances, but also religion and literature and the environment. So if you want more information about this book, I will leave a link to it in the I'll leave a link to the video in the description box where I talk just about this book from the Mondays with Margaret series. The second book that I read from Margaret Atwood, I actually just finished on the last day of November, and that is In Other Worlds, SF and the Human Imagination. This novel is all about Atwood's relationship with science fiction. So from when she's a child, an adolescent, and then as a student and as a writer. And the video where I talk all about this book is coming out on Sunday. And after Sunday, I will be sure to add a link below so that you can check that out too if you are interested in science fiction. It kind of talks about where it comes from, why it's taken the forms that it has, why it even exists in the first place, that kind of thing. So it's worth it if you like science fiction. The third read for me was 3 Women by Taddeo. And this book, I remember having a bit of a buzz when it first came out, and I didn't really know why. I think I kind of know why now that I've read it, and I think that it all comes down to how the book was marketed and how the reader approaches the book. The book is marketed as a nonfiction book. It was in the gender, community, and culture section when I purchased it, and for some, it may set itself up as a book that is going to answer, some big questions with regard to female sexuality. I am almost certain that if those were my expectations, that I would have been very disappointed in the book. The book's title gives it all away, I'm afraid. It's about 3 women, Maggie, Lena, and Sloane. Maggie's story is about her relationship with her English teacher. And I often felt, at least to me, it had some of the same vibe as My Dark Vanessa, if you've read that. Lena is a woman who begins an affair because there's absolutely zero passion in her marriage. And then the story that I liked the least was Sloane, who it turns out is happily married. And Sloane and her husband bring third parties into their marriage and sex life, and it gets a little messy. All 3 stories read like fiction to me. In my opinion, there was no obvious evidence of any research, and no major conclusions are given. And what I found so strange is that at the beginning of the book, it's made perfectly clear how much went into this book, that I think it's something like almost a decade of research went into the writing of this book, and that Taddeo actually moved to 1 or 2 of the women's cities, and I think the part that I found most odd is that she also says that she was there and present for most of what happens in the book. And I'm not sure how that's true. Like, how is that the case? Unless she is a voyeur, or maybe I misunderstood. So because I wasn't reading it to learn of any major insights to women's sexuality, I wasn't disappointed. As I said, the three women's stories read like fiction, and if their stories had been linked in any way, I think that this could have made a very interesting novel. It's a book about something so personal and intimate, and Lisa Taddeo writes that part very well. You get inside the women's heads, and as a woman, I could relate to many of the things that they thought, and I understood their perspectives, on their relationships and things. So if you want to read this, I would suggest approaching it as fiction, because you do get three distinct stories of these women, and if you enjoy character-driven stories or getting to know characters on a very intimate level, then this might be something that would work out for you and that you might enjoy. Up next is a book from St. Martin's Press called Golden Boy, and this is by John Glatt. This is a story that I vaguely recall hearing something about when it happened, but it's not a story that I remembered or that I followed. So this story is about a murder, but for me, I think it's really a story about mental illness. This is a biography of Tommy Gilbert Jr., who came from a rich, very rich family. He went to Princeton, and he just seemed to have everything. He was the golden boy. His relationship with his father became tense when Tommy was maybe preteen, teenager, and became increasingly difficult as he got older. There is mental illness on both sides of the family, and signs of Tommy having mental illness started in his early teens. He experienced paranoia about his father and his friends. He was very obsessive and possessive with his girlfriends. He was always washing because he believed that his clothing would become contaminated. A couple of times doctors recommended that Tommy be hospitalized, but there was no indication that the family really followed through with that recommendation, or that he was getting the help and the treatment that he really needed. He was eventually diagnosed with possible schizophrenia, and there is like this roller coaster of a ride that you go on with them, with Tommy being on medication and then not being medicated. So in 2015, Thomas Gilbert Sr., Tommy's father, is killed, and Tommy is convicted of the murder. And everyone thinks that Tommy murdered his father. In fact, his mother calls 911, and that's what she tells them. She says, that her son killed her husband. But Glatt does give some thoughts on other possibilities. So if you like books based on true crime, then this is definitely one to check out. The next one is the only memoir that I finished this month. I had 3 on my potential list, but I did finish Life in the City of Dirty Water by Clayton Thomas-Muller, who is an Indigenous author living in Canada. And this memoir started off so strong. Clayton Thomas-Muller is first generation of not having attended residential schools, and the intergenerational trauma that he describes in this book is heartbreaking. He shares his memories of his childhood and his early life, and some of the memories are good and many of them are profoundly sad and troubling. He talks about his criminal past, time spent in jail, and then how he changes his life around. The writing is almost poetic at times, and there are so many intense passages. To give you an idea, I just want to read this little bit where he talks about anger, and this is on page 146. I haven't mentioned my anger much. because I didn't notice it for many years, no more than a fish notices water. Anger was the medium I moved in. Anger seduced me into conflict with every authority figure I crossed paths with. Anger lured me into crime. It made senseless violence and pointless destruction the only way I could express myself. It made drug dealing and prostitution seem justified. Because if nothing matters, anything goes. That is the corrosive tide of nihilism. And when I found the path of the land warrior, I only became angrier. Injustice is gasoline on the fire of anger, and I burned bright sometimes, and I got shit done. But I burned those around me, and I was burning myself up. Anger was my sinew. Anger was my fists. Anger made my voice crackle with dangerous energy when I spoke. Anger is rapacious. It consumed me like the winter spirit. I had to free myself. We went through some sweats and ceremony. He gave me a smudge called anger medicine, and I smudged with that for a whole year. It was amazing how much less I swore during public presentations after a year of smudging with anger medicine. But it is not easy to let anger ebb away. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the writing and how profound that it was. Once the memoir became about his activism work, it lost something for me, and the book became a bit disjointed. I think that he's done some amazing things, and this is an important part of his story, but it didn't have the same storytelling appeal that the other parts of the memoir had. This is definitely worth a read. Just know that you may find it to lose, some of its initial momentum. Also, let's just take a moment to admire this cover. I love this cover. Okay. So next up is one of my favorite authors, Lisa Genova. This is her first nonfiction book, and you may know her from Still Alice. She wrote Still Alice, which is about a woman with early onset Alzheimer's. But this was Remember by Lisa Genova, and she's a neuroscientist, and all of her novels have really benefited from the knowledge that she brings to the human experience of the various illnesses that she chooses to write about. In Remember, she is talking about memory, which I think is a really fascinating topic. And she gives explanations for why we remember, or in most cases don't remember. In my case, I don't remember certain things. So like, why can't we remember what we walked into the room to get? Why can we remember all the lyrics to a song from when we were 13? Why can't we remember names? Why do we sometimes, drive someplace, but we don't actually remember doing that or exactly how we got there? So those kinds of things. And basically it comes down to a few simple things. One of them being attention and paying attention to things. And she also talks about people who seem to have amazing memories and photographic memories, and how we can actually all use our memories better if we really wanted to. So 2 things about this book. One is that, I don't know about you, but I sometimes think about things that seem, so inconsequential. And I wonder, why something has stayed with me, or why I think of it more often than I really think I should. And one of those things for me is Mary Lou Henner. And if you don't know who Mary Lou Henner is, she is an actress, and I know her originally from the show Taxi when she played Elaine, but she's done, many films and shows. And I think that the last time I saw her, I think it was on an episode of Bob Hart's Abishola. Anyway, every once in a while I think of Mary Lou Henner, and specifically because I remembered seeing something where she talked about having this like supercharged autobiographical memory, and she can remember every day of her life in detail. And when I first learned about this, I was flabbergasted. I mean, like, just for a second, think about, what you wore yesterday. or what you had for lunch. And then what about last week or a year ago? So most likely, if you're like me, the further away the time is, the less likely I am to know, unless there is a specific event attached to it. But Mary Lou Henner can tell you for every day of her life. So it turns out that Lisa Genova wrote about Mary Lou Henner in this book. And I was so excited because I often think about how Mary Lou Henner, has this ability, and this allowed me to revisit that and to learn even more about her and this gift, or maybe for some people it's a curse, but that she has, and really a handful of people in the world have this. So that was kind of neat. The second thing about this book is that it is a bit repetitive. Now, I don't know if that is done on purpose because it's a book about memory, and repeating things might be helpful to the reader, to remember what you were reading. But that it was a bit of a drawback for me. At one point I just thought, are you just telling me the same thing over and over again? But anyway, if you are interested in the topic of memory, then this is definitely worth reading. So I said at the beginning that I read 6.5 nonfiction books. And I do want to mention the 7th book that I started, because I am halfway through and I am really enjoying it. It's another memoir, and it's also gigantic, All In by Billie Jean King. I would have finished this book, but life circumstances didn't allow for it. And then I had to put it aside to catch up on my Mondays with Margaret reading. So I will finish this in the next couple of weeks, and it will be part of my December wrap-up. So those are the nonfiction books that I read in November. Please let me know your thoughts. Have you read any of these books? Are you interested in reading any of them? If you participated in Nonfiction November, please let me know what books you read and which ones you enjoyed the most. I'd love to hear all about it. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.